Good morning, everyone. We will start the first LAC workshop entitled Welfare and Policies in Latin America and the Caribbean, Advantages and Changes Ahead. We extend the warmest welcome to more than 50 people from plenty of Latin American and European countries, and those joining us through the social networks all around the world. The first edition of the workshop has been possible thanks to the collaborative work of the Economic Association of Costa Rica, the School of Economics of the University of Costa Rica, the Training and Update Program of the School of Economics, and the Institute of Research in Economic Sciences, which is also part of the University of Costa Rica. We also would like to thank the Cooperative and Credit and Savings COPECAJA for their valuable support. Before starting this activity, we kindly remind you to turn off your cell phones. In addition, the emergency exits of the auditorium are properly marked. Please identify the one closest to you. In the event of an earthquake, we ask you to remain calm and exit orderly. The workshop staff is always available in case of any situation. Now, I introduce you to Dr. Yanira Sirinash, the principal of the School of Economics of the University of Costa Rica.
Buenos días, doctor Leonardo Castellón Rodríguez, decano de la Facultad de Ciencias Económicas y presidente de la Junta Directiva del Colegio de Ciencias Económicas, doctor Luis Vargas Montoya, organizador local de LAC, de este primer workshop, doctor Xavier Jara, doctor Olivier Bargain y doctor David Rivera, miembros fundadores de LAC. Distinguidas personas presentadoras de ponencias en este evento, estudiantes, docentes y todo el público que hoy nos acompaña, tanto presencial como a través de las redes sociales en la transmisión en directo. El evento está programado en inglés, por lo que intentaremos abrir este evento en un idioma común para todas las personas que hoy están presentes. On behalf of the School of Economics, Wildlife Network, and the Economics Association of Costa Rica, who is receiving us today in his house, we welcome you most cordially. WildLab is the initiative to bring together research in American, Latin, and Caribbean. It's a network on welfare and policy in America, Latin, and Caribbean. A platform on aims to bring together researchers, practitioners, and policymakers, bringing together experts from LAC countries and European partner institutions working in the issues. Prior to this meeting, workshops have been held to introduce the micro-simulation model to taxes and benefits of Costa Rica CRE-mode. To relevant stakeholders, we are delivering and launch CRE-mode in this international workshop. CRE-mode is now one of the 15 micro-simulation models already developed in America Latina countries, including México, Colombia, Brasil, Argentina, Ecuador, Perú, Bolivia, Chile, Venezuela, Guatemala, Panamá, El Salvador, República Dominicana, and Uruguay. We hope that the next WACLAB meeting, more countries will have developed their own models. Today begins the first WACLAB workshop and collaborative force between the network foundation and the Costa Rica partners, to bring together researchers working on fiscal and social policy focused on American, Latin, and Caribbean. Previously, two virtual meetings we held to discuss issues related to the welfare and public policies. The way participation in the call of paper in the sign on the importance of this topic in Latin America and the Caribbean region. We are sure the efforts made to start the network has already borne fruit by putting on the discuss table a program as broad as the one of the outways in these 2 days. Therefore, I invite to make most of the parallel session and well to the plenary sessions without forgetting, excuse me. Well, ready. One of the more important objectives of the meetings like this is to make relationship with another researchers and the people we make policy around the world. In the region is really important. So please don't forget to make this relationship in the coffee times and the lunches. We are grateful for the collaboration of the Economics Association of Costa Rica, la Oficina de Asuntos Internacionales de la Universidad de Costa Rica, el Instituto de Ciencias Económicas de la Universidad de Costa Rica, the University of Purdue, and the COPECAJA. Sin this support, this event is not possible. So, welcome this meeting, enjoy, and take advantage of it. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce to Leonardo Castellón Rodriguez.
Muy buenos días. En mi doble puesto, tanto como decano de la Facultad de Ciencias Económicas de la Universidad de Costa Rica, como presidente de la Junta Directiva del Colegio de Ciencias Económicas de Costa Rica, es realmente un honor poder tenerles acá, recibirles en el auditorio del Colegio de Ciencias Económicas de Costa Rica. Saludo muy cordialmente a todas las delegaciones de los diferentes países aquí presentes. Por supuesto, también que agradecer y felicitar al equipo organizador de este importante evento internacional, tanto de la Universidad de Costa Rica, las diferentes universidades, como también del Colegio de Ciencias Económicas. Y un cordial saludo a las personas que nos siguen a través de esta transmisión. Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Faculty of Economics of the University of Costa Rica and the Economics Association of Costa Rica, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to this workshop on welfare and policy in Latin America and the Caribbean. We are very grateful for your presence here today. The University of Costa Rica, the Economics Association of Costa Rica, and the other partner institutions are proud to host this event. We believe that it's important to bring together researchers, policymakers, and other stakeholders to discuss the most pressing economic and social issues facing our region. This workshop is particularly timely as we are at a critical juncture in Latin America and the Caribbean. The region is facing several challenges, including poverty, inequality, and crime. However, there are also several opportunities for progress. We believe that this workshop can help us to identify new solutions to the challenges we face and to develop new policies that can promote the well-being of all people in Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to especially thank the coordinator of WAPLAC, Javier Jara of the London School of Economics, and Olivier Barguin of the Bordeaux School of Economics for their support, for their effort setting up this network and organizing this event. I'm convinced that this first plenary session, which they will lead, will be both instructive and stimulating. Now, I give the floor to Javier and Olivier. Thank you.
Okay, I will stand. Buenos dias. Thanks for this very nice introductory speech, and thanks to all the team of the Colegio and of the university, and to Luis for the grand organization of this event. We are super happy. So it's going to be like in piano with 4 hands. We're going to do a little plenary with Javier to show you a few things. But first of all, I wanted to say that we are super happy to launch WAPLAC here in Costa Rica with you all, and the program looks fantastic, thanks to the quality of all the papers that are going to be presented today and tomorrow. So the idea of this first kind of unusual plenary, because it's really something to really launch and explain everything about WAPLAC, is it's going to go along these different points, but we are also going to stick to the more academic approach by talking about some papers and some research to give a feedback on different papers that are actually relevant directly to what we could do all together. So I'll go back to the genesis of this network and a bit the activities. Javier will take over to also explain activities and resources and future plan, and then we'll discuss 3 different pieces of research that we are working on. And then we can open the floor to really discuss all together about the future. So a bit of the genesis and the spirit of WAPLAC. So it started some years ago, thanks to Javier and the colleagues in Ecuador, and also the colleagues from UniWider, who helped to organize a big conference in Quito. And it was already a bit the same kind of format, with a big workshop and a very friendly atmosphere, at the same time high scientific quality. And then not long after, we find ourselves alone at home, trapped during COVID, and then we felt desperate, in need of human contact. And so at some point we were chatting on the phone with Javier and say, why don't we, the day we can talk to other people again without a mask, why don't we organize this kind of event like in Quito every year with a broad community of people from Latin America and a few friends from Europe. And so it started like this, and there was also in the back of our mind where we are coming from, which is a community that was mainly in Europe, and that kind of brought Europeans together around social and fiscal policies in a project called Euromod. And we are happy to have Salvador here today, who's leading the Euromod project on the side of the European Commission and the research center of the European Commission. But Euromod was a great experience for us all, and we were young PhD students going to these conferences with people from all the countries of Europe, and it was a fantastic network for us to make friends, to learn about other cultures, and to also, find some business proposal that could be new papers, collaboration, opportunities for jobs, etc., etc. So WAPLAC is a bit in a way, in the spirit, the equivalent, and the idea was then to start this community, this network here for Latin America and South America. So friendship and partnership, friendly and cultural exchanges, we have started already. For us, more on the European side, to discover a lot of the culture and also, of course, the economies of many different countries here, and for people here also to improve and accelerate their understanding of each other. And I'll talk, the comparative work will come back throughout, because it's also an idea to really work on several countries at the same time, and the example we're going to give is exactly that. It's working on different countries to compare, to benchmark, but also to exploit the geographical variation. I will come back to this. And it's a network to help each other, to learn from each other. Exchanges can take different form. One of them is also to work together through a PhD thesis. So I'm very happy with Mayra, David, and other PhD students in Bordeaux who are in the network and from different countries of the LAC region. And other aspect would be sharing tools also. I mean, we just discussed the possibility to use administrative data from Costa Rica, from Ecuador, to share microsimulation tools, survey data, and many other things that we could put in the basket and to use together. So working together, and in particular, I mentioned this comparative work. So what is WAPLAC in the landscape? That's a slide that we didn't put at first, and we were asking, because we might say, well, but what is the use of it compared to LAC, compared to other things? And there's still a question mark at the end, because we actually don't have a full answer to this. And you're going to help us to answer this question. There's the LAC, which is at the highest standard of the profession, with mainstream economic research, with the deep focus on causality. I guess WAPLAC is broader than this. It goes beyond this, only obsession for pure causality, and sometimes losing a bit the context, losing a bit the big picture. So WAPLAC has this kind of asset, first because it is broader in terms of method. It goes from microsimulation indeed, to administrative data, but also socioeconomics, qualitative data, experiments, etc., etc. And the bigger picture also for social and policy relevant discussions for Latin American and the Caribbean countries. In particular, again, I come back to this, in particular through the prism of comparative studies, again, comparing the countries. That's what we've done. I was mentioning Euroma, that's what we've done in Europe, to really say, okay, but the labor market works in this way in Germany, so how do we learn from that for France, etc. So this kind of discussions are already going on here, but WAPLAC's ambition would be to accelerate and really to push this a bit further. There are many other entities. Javier worked at the LAC in the III Center Institute with a focus on inequality with Chico Ferreira, and part of it is, of course, in Latin America with the LAC report. But it has a focus on inequality. WAPLAC could be broader than inequality. The World Bank has, of course, a lot of research in Latin America, but many on program evaluations. WIDER is supporting for the macro-simulation part. WIDER is supporting what is called South Mode and Latin Mode, which is the extension of Euromode to many Latino countries. But it's about building infrastructure. While what we are here is a community for those who use this kind of tool, a community of users, the people who use the tool to do research with it, not only to program this. So WIDER is interested by WAPLAC because we are kind of downstream. They design the model to run social policy simulation for different countries in Latin America, but we're going to use it to enrich the policy debate, to write academic paper, etc., etc. So this community of users is important. Said last, but from my understanding, it focuses more on education and labor market, but there are many initiatives in the region, on the continent, that could be also relevant to as a point of comparison. So this discussion is really just open here. So WAPLAC is more of a platform, more of a network to bring us all to discuss from academia or policy circles, to discuss social and human and policy challenges and to federate international research. And so WAPLAC W is welfare and peace policy. This is kind of a short summary of what it should contain. I mean, welfare includes inequality, poverty, inequality between gender, inequality between ages, inequality between households, different measures of well-being, etc., etc. Policy contains, of course, social and fiscal policies. I was talking about micro-assimilation, but not only. It could be, of course, labor market institution and the role of informality. We were discussing this earlier on in the labor market and how policies should address that. And the political economy, which is increasingly important in the disturbed world where democracy is threatened more and more. So support for democracy, but also social preferences, social movements, as we have experienced in many countries in Europe and in Latin America. And compliance to policies, that is a key thing for sustainability and the future policy for the environment in particular, but also for social policies. So it's not another structure with the heaviness of a structure. So there's not really in WAPLAC a formal bureau. I talk about informality. We are also quite informal in a way, even though today it's formal in a nice way, and the team here has put a huge effort to make this at the standard of the best conferences, and we are very grateful for this. But WAPLAC overall is a network and should remain somehow informal. So there's a little managing team that we endorse this role for the moment, and later on it will be other people who will take over. There's a local team for the organization of the conference, and we have a steering committee that is actually a guarantee of credibility of the whole initiative with a prominent researcher and policy circle colleagues from renowned institutions. Salvador is here for the European Commission and other people from different institutions. But the idea is to keep things simple because time is limited and we should use the time to just exchange. It's been said before, use the coffee break and lunch to think about, the future and future papers and other things along these lines. So to do that and promote the research made by WAPLAC people, what beyond the network, we need just two things, a workshop and a website. So the main resource is you. We put most of the researchers who are at the moment on the website. If you're not there yet, then we're going to, with David and Javier, we're going to put a note and make sure you appear on the website very, very soon. So the network, the workshop, and the website. So the workshop, again, it depends on the local team who's volunteering for the organization. And again, I would like to make an official, it's hard to upload with a microphone in the end, but again, to upload to Luis and all the team here. If you can give a big applause already now to thank them for their super organization. The program is also part of the workshop, and we received actually a lot of papers. And it's been a big work, so also another big applause to Javier and David, who have been really involved very deeply in preparing the nice program today. So the third thing is a website, and the website is really nice. It shows the work of the researchers from the different countries. It shows how we are connected to the steering committee, but also to the institutions that are related to the steering committee and beyond, so IIA, the World Bank, UNIWIDER, etc. And you're going to upload a lot today, because I think there's someone we need to thank a lot is for incredible work so far on many different dimensions, but in particular for this fantastic website is David again. So he's the center person of the whole thing. Thanks a lot, David. Yeah. So I put some of the funky picture he put on the website is quite nice, and so you'll see bits from the website in the slide today. So how do we do these things? So resources is human resources, is the work of a few of us, but still we need resources. And I think that's when I give the microphone to Javier.
Thanks a lot, Olivier, and thank you everyone for being here. Looking at those number of pictures there of everyone who's member and now having you here is a real pleasure for me. And looking at that picture especially, I see that I was much younger when I sent that picture, so I should perhaps update it. But anyway, in terms of resources, you might have noticed we haven't asked for any membership subscription. There was no subscription or registration fees for this workshop. So in that sense, we have tried to make it as available and as open as possible, because the idea was always to have something very informal among friends, just a platform where we could share together and just give more visibility about what each of us is doing. But perhaps that I think we have done quite a lot already. So for the conference this year, as you can see that we are thanking again a lot to Luis for the big organization, to the University of Costa Rica and Colegio de Ciencias Económicas de Costa Rica for hosting us here today and tomorrow, allowing us to use their conference rooms, paying for lunches, coffee breaks, and just give us this space to be able to share together all our work. The website's costs and Thursday dinners and Friday drinks are thanks to the University of Bordeaux, specifically the Project Hope, led by Olivier Bargan. So then again, a big thank you to Olivier. I think we haven't applauded him yet, so this is the opportunity to do so. And for the next years, I mean, perhaps just to tell you again that this space is really to start brainstorming about how to look at the future of this platform. We're still thinking of how to keep it going. Do we need sponsors? Do we need conference fees? Can we can we keep it small, or can we still increase it without much cost? So all these points are really up for discussion at this point. For the website, the initial design was a collaboration between Olivier, David, and I. But now again, just please take a look. We have made our best to make it very lively, but if you have ideas, if you have things that you think should be included there, just let us know. And the idea is that also this is a shared resource, so this is a public good among all of the members of the network. The maintenance is continuous work. So far it has worked mostly from David's side, who has given incredible input. At some point we might need to relay also this to anyone else in the network who might be interested. So again, just let us know if this is something that you would like to collaborate with us. What's currently there? Members' works. We have all the members there. We have information about participation in conferences. So just take a look, just to show you, we make the best to put in there any type of research that is done by our members. This again with the aim of giving more visibility of what everyone else is doing here. The idea is that we really show how much we are doing, that we learn from each other, and that we use this as a platform for others to know what is being done in Latin America. In terms of activities, especially what we have done this year, we had panel sessions at national, international conferences. We were at the LAC conference last year in Bogota for a special session on fiscal policy, redistribution, and formal employment in Latin America. We presented a LAC, some of the work I will present here. But then again, this is really to let you know that be it at the national level or at the international level, we're always willing to help to provide a platform to show what the network is doing. Okay? But now, what are the future plans? As I said, I think we have done quite a big job already with the little resources we had. So we want to keep this work going. We want to keep the activities in terms of panel sessions, international conferences. So here are just a few ideas of things that will be taking place later this year or next year. The LAC 2024 in Montevideo, whether we might have an opportunity or whether we see their scope of having a special session there. Next year, Luis told me that the International Conference on Computing in Economics and Finance is going to take place here in Costa Rica. So that might be another opportunity to have a space for anyone of the network who might want to present their work there. And then up to discussion is whether we want to keep this workshop as an annual thing or every 2 years. But in any case, any volunteers, any person who wants to, sorry, I think that I just messed the thing up. So I think I'm going to ask for help to Mariela, but just to say that at some point we already have spoken with some teams who would like to volunteer, maybe to organize the next WAPLAC workshop. So please just let us know. So the idea here is again to collaborate with you, anyone who is interested, and then just take the opportunity to talk to Luis so that he can let us know how much time and effort it was spent on something like this. The idea is not to make it fancy, the idea is not to make something big, the idea is really to have a space for all of us to get together and to share our work, okay? In terms of website, just let us know once again how you think we could take it farther and reach it. Something that we have thought about, for example, is at the moment we don't have a space there to share tools, so we could have also a space in the website where we give links to analytical tools. We have talked about these microsimulation models, links to where these microsimulations can be requested from, but also tools in terms of data. Where do we find data that allows us to do comparative work across Latin American countries, be it administrative data, harmonized service, etc. Or whether we think that, we might also think about a special working paper series from WAPLAC. So some of you who has some work and who do not know to which series to send it, we could think about the WAPLAC working paper series, just to share, again, the work we do that is not published or is in the process of being reviewed. And then just expanding WAPLAC, as Olivier mentioned, so not all of you who are here with us are members of the network yet, but if you would like to be members, just let us know. I think some little papers have been circulated for questions. If you don't have any questions, at least put your name and say that you would like to be part of the network, and then we already have something in our hands with your names on them. But now, as part of this presentation, we also wanted to let you know some research examples of multi-country analysis. We'll give you 3 examples of things that we have done with Olivier and co-authors using microsimulation models, not because we want to focus only on microsimulation models, that's just because that's our background, but just to give you an idea of what is the purpose of, or what is the interest of doing comparative work. So let me start with learning from your neighbors. So this is a paper that we worked on with Olivier and David Rodriguez, who's also here with us. It has been published in the Journal of Economic Inequality. And the idea when we started working on this paper is that part of the differences in inequality and poverty across countries are explained by differences in the design of taxes and benefits. So we know that in some countries, personal income tax might be more progressive, social assistance benefits might be more generous or have wider coverage in other countries. So here the idea was really trying to understand what would happen in one country if this country would adopt the policies of another one, okay? And for that, we took the example of 2 neighbor countries, Ecuador and Colombia. And because at that point we have fully developed the tax and benefit model for these 2 countries, as it was mentioned before, now we have these tools for 15 Latin American countries this year. As part of this workshop, we launched the model for Costa Rica. We wanted to use these tools to take the tax and benefit rules of Ecuador and apply them to the population of Colombia. and then take the tax and benefit rules of Colombia and apply it to the population of Ecuador, and then see what happens. So actually what we noticed is that if you compared inequality in Ecuador to inequality in Colombia, take the first line of the table there, the Gini coefficient. Inequality in Ecuador, that's column number 1, was around 43.2% in terms of Gini. Okay? If we looked at Colombia, that's the last column there, column number 4, the Gini coefficient is 53.4. This was for policies in 2014. So that's around 10 Gini points different. So that's quite a lot. So at that point we were thinking about how much of these 10 points is explained because policies are different in these two countries. So what we did, as I said, we took the population of Colombia and applied the taxes and benefits of Ecuador. That's column number 2. And as you can see, if you do this exercise, the Gini coefficient would move from 53.4 to 51.7. So inequality in Colombia will decrease if Colombia had taxes and benefits with the design of those of Ecuador at that time, okay? If we do the same exercise for Ecuador, so that's column number 3, we take the population of Ecuador and we apply taxes and benefits from Colombia, we see that the Gini coefficient would move from 43.2 to 45.3, so inequality would increase. So we see that this is symmetric, okay? And in that sense, these contrafactuals allow us to decompose or to quantify how much taxes and benefits contribute to differences in inequality across countries. And what we see is that from this policy swap, we learn that around 20% of differences in inequality and poverty between these two countries is due to differences in taxes and benefits. So these are non-negligible percentage of inequality that is explained due to the design of taxes and benefits, okay? And perhaps a little note, here at the time we had microsimulation models only for 2 countries. We have it for 15 countries now. So we think that there's a scope for further analysis on this line, not only across countries, but over time, trying to understand how policies over time have contributed to changes in inequality. So any person who is interested in this type of analysis is more than welcome to talk to us, and we can think whether we can expand this work. Another example of comparative work is something we are currently working on with Olivier and Eva Taseva from the London School of Economics, and it's actually moving along another direction of welfare. So far, there's a lot of discussion about how much taxes and benefits reduce poverty and inequality, but a very important dimension which became very prevalent during the pandemic is automatic stabilization, okay? By automatic stabilization, what we mean is how taxes and benefits will react when there is a shock in market income. So during the pandemic, many people lost their jobs, they were unemployed, or they had their income, their labor income reduced. So how much did taxes and benefits help to cushion that labor market loss, okay? So following a drop in earnings, the idea is to use these tools to quantify how much taxes and benefits react to protect some of the drop in labor income so that disposable income decreases by less, okay? So consider these 3 dimensions. So on the one hand, we have redistribution, which we could define it as the difference in Gini coefficient between pre-tax and benefits and post-tax and benefits. On the other hand, you have poverty reduction, that's the second dimension, that would be the difference between pre-tax and transfer and post-tax and transfer. In this case, let's take just the headcount ratio. And then let's look at the third dimension, automatic stabilization, which we will measure it by the automatic stabilization coefficient. So here what we do is we shock the data, so we take household surveys in different countries, and we artificially decrease labor market income for everyone in the data, and we run the models to see how much taxes and benefits react to that drop of market income, okay? We want to know how would these countries around the world compare along these 3 dimensions. And for this, we study 50 countries. All these 50 countries have tools developed in Euromod. So 50 tax and benefit microsimulation models, 28 for Europe, 14 for Latin America, and 8 for Sub-Saharan Africa, and we focus on the pre-pandemic period. Okay. No, it's not responding. Just trying to move from this slide, okay? Thank you. And here let's think first about the 2 first dimensions, poverty reduction and redistribution. So here in this graph, on the y-axis you have redistribution, so this is the difference in the Gini coefficient, pre-tax and transfer versus post-tax and transfer, okay? So how much taxes and benefits reduce inequality. On the x-axis, you have poverty reduction. So this is the difference in the headcount index from pre-tax and benefit versus post-tax and benefit, okay? And here we plot the different countries that we have, 50 countries. And we find some very interesting regional differences. First, we see that there is a positive correlation between redistribution and poverty reduction. We would expect that. I think that's not too much of a surprise. Countries that redistribute more, that manage to reduce inequality the most, also reduce poverty the most. But let's look at some regional differences. If you see here, in the first circle, we have a group of countries which manage to reduce inequality through taxes and benefits, but do not reduce poverty, okay? They have modest redistribution, but they have no poverty reduction through taxes and benefits, and that group of countries is mostly made of sub-Saharan African countries, okay? Then we have a second group of countries which achieve some modest redistribution through taxes and benefits, but also some modest poverty reduction. And here in the second group, we have most Latin American countries, okay? We have a fourth group with a bit larger poverty reduction and redistribution, and here we find some exceptions in Latin America. We have Uruguay there, Brazil, Argentina, and South Africa. So these are exceptions of sub-Saharan Africa and Latin American countries which achieve larger redistribution, larger poverty reduction through taxes and benefits. And then finally, we have a fourth large group which is made of European countries with much larger redistribution, much larger poverty reduction through taxes and benefits, okay? So I think this is already very interesting in terms of how much taxes and benefits are redistributing and reducing poverty. But now let's move to automatic stabilization. What does that extra dimension tell us? And here we are splitting countries in 3 groups. The yellow ones are countries with low stabilization. The blue ones, the blue triangles, are medium stabilization, and the red crosses are high stabilization. And what we see is that despite the fact that Latin American countries were doing better in poverty and inequality reduction than sub-Saharan Africa, we see that now if we look at automatic stabilization, we basically fall in the same group. Very limited automatic stabilization. This means that in the event of shocks, in the event of a negative economic shock, taxes and benefits do very little to protect household income, okay? The only exceptions in this case are Uruguay and South Africa from low and middle income countries, where we see that they achieve medium stabilization as some European countries, okay? That's why we think that this additional dimension, this additional welfare dimension deserves much more discussion in terms of poverty. This actually means that if during the pandemic, Latin American governments had not introduced emergency programs to help low-income families, the situation during the pandemic would have been much worse because there's no automatic stabilization, automatic protection by taxes and benefits. And I'll finish with this graph, which is trying to show us why, or what is explaining the low stabilization. Here we are ranking all the 50 countries from low stabilization to the highest stabilization in terms of the income stabilization coefficient. The red countries are Latin American countries, and as you can see, they rank really, really low. Guatemala, Peru, Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Dominican Republic, and El Salvador rank even lower than countries like Uganda, Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Tanzania. Okay? Why? This is explained because, as you can see, the black bar here is how taxes react to income shocks. And we see that taxes are contributing a lot to automatic stabilization in many countries, whereas in Latin America, taxes have very little impact, very little automatic stabilization, as well as the white bar social insurance contributions. Okay? This is explained by two things. The first one, a problem that we are all aware, informality. Because the labor market is segmented in Latin America, this means that taxes and social insurance contributions have a very limited impact compared to European countries. Okay? But the second one, and perhaps more interesting, and that's what differentiates us from Sub-Saharan Africa, is that personal income tax has very little incidence because the threshold above which people start paying taxes is very high. And because of this, then we have lower stabilization from taxes than Sub-Saharan countries, okay? And then finally, from the benefit side, we see that in some countries benefits, so there's the gray bar there. In European countries, benefits act as stabilizers because if you lose your job in Europe, you can go and claim social assistance because social assistance depends on your income. In Latin America, if you lose your job, but you are not below the welfare index that is used for social assistance, you cannot claim social assistance. You are not entitled to claim social assistance. So basically, benefits do not act as automatic stabilizers, although they help to reduce poverty and inequality. So I think I will finish with this just to leave you some food for thought about what can be done with this comparative work.
Okay, and then the third piece of research is going to focus even more on informality. As Javier mentioned, one of the specificities of many Latin American countries, which is, of course, a complex story because you have some good form of informality, but usually also a lot of bad forms of informality. And in the context of social and tax policies, it's a central element to take into account, especially when we want to expand these policies to perform further redistribution, reduction of poverty, and in particular through the further development of the cash transfer programs. You all know this big literature on conditional cash transfers, but despite that they are very popular and have been implemented in many countries, they still represent a small GDP percentage of the economy of many Latin American countries, for instance, compared to the social expenditure in some European countries. So to perform this scaling up of social system and further reduce inequality, you need to increase tax and increase the progressivity of taxation. But if you do that, you may actually create some disincentive effect and basically reduce the tax base. So there's this counterproductive response of the tax system, again going through the informal sector. People would, if they're taxed too much, they would move informal. So how do we deal with that? We can actually try to identify this disincentive effect, to measure it, to measure some kind of elasticity of the formalization as a response to a change in overall taxation. That could be a tax, that could be social contribution, or that could be the withdrawal of benefits if they were means tested. Usually they are not, they are proxy means tested, but that's also part of it. So that's what we do in a paper with Javier and David. And we focus on Ecuador, Colombia, and Bolivia, having 3 points in time. So we have data set survey data for these 3 countries and 3 years. And we have the microsimulation model for all these, for these 9 points, these 9 surveys. We focus on these 3 countries because, well, to be honest, because the microsimulation model was partly available for it, but not fully. I mean, there was a lot of work involved to actually update it for older years. But also, and mainly because these 3 countries are, again, not far from each other and close also in terms of economies and the role of, or the prevalence of informality. So it's very interesting to do this comparative work and use also this geographical variation here. So what we do, we use a pseudo-panel approach. So we create some, we don't have panel, but so we use cells that are defined on gender group, age group, and education groups, and also urban, rural. And so with this pseudo-panel, then we, different type of people would be exposed differently to a level of tax pressure in case of formalization. And we're going to use a definition of this tax pressure as what we call a formalization tax rate. It's basically how much of your income disappears when you switch from informality to formality. How much goes, because when you become formal, you start to pay taxes and social contribution. So this kind of overall tax rate is calculated by microsimulation at the individual level and aggregated at the cell level. And then we use the time variation in policy reforms for the 3 countries and over time, and the fact that different type of cells in the pseudo-panel are exposed differently to the change in this tax pressure. And when you do that, you have these graphs that just show the trends but that we get and also in regressions. But basically what they represent is the difference in formal employment, so the difference in formalization over time as a response to the variation in this formalization tax rate. And you see these negative elasticities everywhere, significant everywhere in the 3 countries under study. If you can actually pull all the countries together and use the geographical variation as an additional layer, an additional dimension of variation in your pseudo-panel. If you run this kind of pool regression over the 3 countries on all the cells in the pseudo-panel, you get a kind of ground elasticities of around -0.4, which means that if you increase formalization tax rates by 10%, which is an additional 1 percentage point of taxation, you would decrease formalization by 3.8%. If you bring this elasticity to the number of workers in the formal labor force, that's about 500,000 workers that would move informal. So when you put it in this term, that looks like a huge thing for just a change of 1% of this net tax measure that we are using. So this elasticity is, you think 0.3 is small, but in fact it has a huge implication. And we are dealing with small reforms, what we call like ordinary reforms, the everyday reforms. Usually economists, to publish a paper in a good journal, they are going to focus on the big reform. They want something big that is going to have a lot of statistical power and then generate big effects. So we thought, well, we are going to do exactly the opposite. We are going to bring together small reforms, accumulated, because life is like this, and maybe if over time these countries are going to implement normal type of reform like that, in a cumulated way, this reform might have the same implication, the same disincentive effect on the tax base as a one-shot big reform. And that's exactly what we see. And when you compare our estimate in the graph here on the right with the literature is usually single reform, like big reforms. There are different studies for Argentina, Colombia, etc. then our estimates are exactly in line with what the literature tells with the big reforms. And to finish on this, and that would be the end of our presentation, as Javier did for the first paper, we want to offer the possibility, or launch the possibility to work together with any of you who are interested, using these tools to look at the redistributive impact of social and fiscal policies in Latin America, but here also to look at the disincentive effects of these policies on formal employment. Because what we did was only for 3 countries. As I said, we're close to each other. And in these countries, you see this graph, they show the level of formalization tax rate across deciles. And Bolivia is a U-shape, but the larger tax rates are nonetheless for the poorer people. And it's even clearer for Colombia and Ecuador. So at the bottom of the distribution, people pay social contribution, and if they are self-employed in particular, then they pay at the level of the minimum wage, which is often higher than their own income, and so they pay. If they become formal, they pay a lot of social contribution. So they are taxed implicitly a lot. If you take now richer countries in Latin America, if you take Brazil, Argentina, Chile, etc., Uruguay, then you may have the opposite picture because of income tax. And then the richer people may face a higher formalization tax rate. So to expand this work to other countries would be, of course, extremely interesting. And here is, again, another proposal. If you're interested to work on this with us for the next paper with many countries, that's one of the possibilities with this WAPLAC collaboration. I'll let Javier have the final word, maybe, or... and run we are going to run a bit of a discussion if you want.
No, thank you, Olivier. That's it. I mean, from our side, welcome again. We hope you make the most of it. And I see that there's people running around collecting the questions. So before then, I don't know if anyone want to start, even if their question is coming now.
Sounds like a TV show with a quiz, but we are quite bad candidates. So.
Okay, so we have a first question. The question is, are you including migration policies in the databases? It would be interesting to simulate integration of foreign-born in the labor market and the economy in general. Do you want to go first on the question? Whether we include migration policies in the simulations, and it would be interesting to simulate integration of foreign-born in the labor market.
In the last piece, we actually check if people have lived in the same place for 5 years. To control a little bit for migration, because indeed if people move, then this pseudo-panel strategy doesn't work so well. So we try to control for that and see for the people who are kind of geographically stable, if the estimates are the same and they are broadly the same. I don't know if it answered the question.
Perhaps just to complement, because we use microdata, we can exploit the heterogeneity in the survey. So if in the survey we have sufficient information about foreign-born versus locals, we could exploit this information in the analysis for any type of analysis that we do.
So I have a question. Does WAPLAC plan to have its own journal? So that could be an idea for the future. As we said, for the moment, we want to keep it simple. And even to launch a working paper series is a lot of work. I mean, David knows that, and has worked a lot already on the website on gathering all the links to WAPLAC members' working papers that are published elsewhere. And I think this is already quite useful and nice to see what people are doing. Then the next step is to really take all these papers and present them with a packaging, a WAPLAC packaging, and that is more work and more time. I'm not sure we would have the resources, and some people have to finish their PhD, some professors have to teach, etc. So I don't know if we have the time for that. And the journal is even one step beyond, a huge step beyond that. So, but why not for the future? We don't know. Maybe we'll have a lot of resources and we could think big, but for the moment we are at the situation that we have described.
Yeah, it's true that we haven't thought about those lines, but something that we have been discussing is whether we could take advantage of these annual workshops, perhaps to organize little sessions with young scholars. We have one session, the last session of the second day is organized by the Young Scholars Initiative. These are presentation sessions, but we could also think about something more structured for young early scholars on how to publish, what things to do. So this is again open to discussion about how we could use this platform for things related either to publications or for policy. You go first.
What about to tax more the rich by increasing corporate income tax?
No, I think that's a good question. It's something we haven't explored this far yet because we have concentrated on households. So the microsimulation tools that we have developed are all comparative, but it relates to personal income tax. So income paid by individuals, and then we aggregate at the level of households. We could think about tools to simulate corporate tax reforms. I think here the thing to think about is availability of data. First, whether there's data for one country already that we could use, but then how to expand it to do comparative analysis. So in that sense, I think this is the opportunity as well to think about these things. So what is available, what type of data we could use to expand this type of analysis. Something that we usually do with microsimulation tools is, for example, we think about reforms to social assistance, or there has been a lot of discussion about universal basic income. And then, of course, from the policy level, the discussion is how do you finance these things? With the microsimulation tool, you could try to figure out how much income tax could increase in order to pay this type of reforms. But it's true that why should we only think about personal income tax to enhance social assistance? In the sense, corporate income tax reforms or wealth taxation should also be on the dish, let's say, for discussion for this type of reforms. So yeah, we hope that in the future we would be able to go along that line as well. The next question is, in order not to decrease the tax base, why not explore for VAT progressive reforms?
I don't know if we have VAT in the models, because they would record data where you have also consumption, but maybe for some countries there is. But yeah, it's already there. For the countries where you have consumption, it's already there because you already have a zero VAT rate on necessary goods for some countries. So some of us would be really excited by this because we work also a lot on consumption and inequality of not income, but of consumption. So and all the targeting literature. So that would be quite nice to. It has been in the mind of everyone working on this tax simulation for a long time, but again, it's quite rare to have a data set that contains everything you need to do that. So I think Euromod has partly some VAT imputation, but...
Yes, so at the moment from the models that exist for Latin America, some surveys that are used by the models have both income and expenditures. So for those countries, there exists in the simulation the code to simulate VAT or consumption taxes, or special consumption taxes. Those models that are part of SouthMod, so Colombia, Ecuador, Bolivia, and Peru also have in the data expenditure, some either directly from the data or imputed from other data sources to enable these sort of simulations. And the idea would be to hopefully enable to do this type of simulations for all the countries for which we have models. So I think the Euromod experience is very similar. So the main service that were used in the model contain only income, but there has been a huge effort to do imputations from other services to be able to simulate indirect taxes. So that is an expansion that we hope to take forward in the future, to take into account these possibilities of thinking about indirect tax reforms, not only direct taxation.
So you compare countries with different institutions. What role do you see for developing cross-country analysis of the role of institutions? So it's a good question. As I mentioned at the beginning, the WAPLAC has a broader scope in a way by the tools, in terms of tools or method used by economists. And we have some colleagues, for instance, we have some colleagues in Bordeaux, they couldn't make it today. We work exactly on this, on more institutional economics, and to really have a deeper historical approach, institutional approach, and so on, and combine it with the kind of more direct database analysis that we do here would be very interesting. For instance, if we talk about informality, and to compare countries where many countries which don't have any unemployment insurance system to the few countries in Latin America with some more like a formal type of unemployment and unemployment insurance system, and to see how unemployment insurance has been developed as an institution, the role of social partners, of unions, the CEO boards, etc., and governments, and how this institution have been developed, and how the similar process could be followed by other, again, neighbor countries possibly. So this would be extremely interesting to pursue as a research, and probably in collaborative work again with the other approaches that we have described here today.
And I think the last question is why redistribution is seen as direct taxes for individuals. Obviously this is going to work, but if I know that 1/3 of my paycheck is going to vanish, I probably will work less or go to the informal side. And I think that's precisely what the last exercise shows. So we see that progressive reforms to personal income tax can have a negative incentive effect on people to move to formal employment. So we do see that interaction. I think in terms of policy, it is important to take this behavioral effect into account when we do policy reforms. We cannot neglect it. It should be part of the analysis, but we need to understand much more the size of these reactions. It might differ across countries. It might be specific to certain policies. So I think the exercise that Olivier presented at the end aimed to somehow quantify this with small reforms. But I think behind these questions, at least the way I understand it, is also how we perceive taxation. So what are we paying our taxes for? And I think that is a big discussion in Latin America. I think in Europe, people understand that taxes are being used for infrastructure, to provide better health. But perhaps in Latin America, part of the story is that we don't know what is being done with these taxes. So in that sense, our perceptions and our understanding of how these things are used either to enhance social protection or for infrastructure, I think that's an important part of the story that we need to explore And in this sense, the collaboration with people who are in government institutions is very important, because even feasibility of potential reforms depend a lot on the understanding that people have about the impact that these reforms are going to have.
And it relates to a point that we mentioned at the beginning, but not in our own work, which is the political economy side of things, and support for redistributive policies and compliance with tax benefit systems, which is of course key for the sustainability of this system. Thinking about middle class who don't perceive that they would benefit from the social contribution or taxes that they would pay, and feel treated unfair compared to the bottom or the top of the distribution, while they are actually the support to this kind of redistributive reform is key. This is a big and very critical role, and I mentioned that we should again be put together with the kind of work we've presented today.
I don't know if there's any last-minute question from the audience. Yes, Andres.
About informality. And side of labor, but not about the supply side. I mean, is it true that taxation may disincentivate a person to move from formal to informal labor, or is just the job that you can get? I mean, you cannot choose to move from the formal to the informal sector, or the other way around. So I think that it is important also to see at the supply side, because there is a restriction on the supply side of labor, and probably that's something that must be included for the specific effect of taxation. That's what made a thought about that. Yeah.
So the usual way out of this is, our estimate is a lower bound, which is what it is, because indeed, if you cannot, but it's more than that. It's in the situation that we look at, the 3 years that we look at for the 3 countries, it's mainly an increase in tax pressure. So it means mainly a move from formal to informal, which is easy because you can easily find an informal job. If it was the other way around, if it was a decrease in taxation that would encourage people to become formal, then it would be even more of a lower bound. But, so we hope that it represents something meaningful.
Good, this is great. So there's more questions coming. Can we expect that reducing or canceling welfare and redistribution policies will lead to more inequality and poverty than before the initial implementation of such policies? I think thinking in the very direct effect as the models do, so the day after effect of such reforms, we will see a reduction of redistribution and increase in poverty, because as we saw, taxes and benefits do contribute to decreasing inequality and poverty in most countries. Only in sub-Saharan Africa we saw that taxes and benefits have no effect on poverty reduction, or even increase poverty due to the effect of direct taxation. Now the discussion is what happens after, so how the economy moves from this short-term impact to the medium and long-term. Personally, I wouldn't be able to answer, but I do think that the welfare state is there for something, because, as the discussion was saying, I don't think it's only a matter of incentives. It is partly, but for some families, those aids is because in some cases, they do not manage to find a job, or they need additional time for finding a job. And I think that is the aim, the main purpose of the welfare state, to provide support while these families move to a better position in the labor market. Personally, I would think that would be my thoughts. Technically, I think it's more difficult to assess, but I think that is the rationale behind welfare policies.
Yeah, one dimension that is missing there as well is we can say, okay, we stop redistributing in terms of welfare policies, social policies, but we give in-kind support, not monetary support, and we also provide public goods. So it's a huge element that we don't necessarily have there, but bit by bit, the microsimulation model in particular managed to have like monetary equivalent of in-kind benefits or the value of access to public goods. It's difficult to do, but I mean, it's done. It should be merged with other work. There's a huge effort by a student of Thomas Piketty at the moment to, at a global level, for really a lot of countries to measure the role of public goods in terms of inequality. So that's a dimension that could be, I mean, some partnership that could be established by improving microsimulation with this kind of data.
Okay, if there's no more questions, we can close here. I don't know whether there's some housekeeping rules. Yeah, so I'll pass the microphone to Angelica. Thank you.
We keep them.
Thank you very much, Javier and Olivier. And once again, thank you for your attention to this welcoming and the first plenary session. Now, let me take a couple of minutes to briefly explain the program of all the event. Today, after coffee time, we have 2 parallel sessions during the morning. After lunch, we have the keynote lecture for 1 hour and then other 2 parallel sections. In the afternoon, there will also be coffee time and followed by this space, the last parallel sessions of the day, finishing at 18:30 hours, okay? We end today with the gala dinner at 19:30 hours. Tomorrow, we will have 6 more sessions starting at 9 a.m. at the University of Costa Rica. We will provide you the exact location. At 16:10 hours, we have the policy panel in Spanish, simultaneously translated to English. And we close the event with a cultural activity and a cocktail at 17:10 p.m. hours. Now, you are kindly invited to move to the lobby, drink a good Costa Rican coffee, and have a friendly chat. Please enjoy your stay at the event. Thank you.